Today's going to be a fun one. We're going to talk about scars. Yeah, and everybody got pretty fired up about that. And if we're going to talk about scars, we're going to talk about some things. We're going to talk about scar stories. And if we can talk about scar stories, then we're going to talk about some Jesus things. And if we can do some Jesus things, then avoiding and denial, my friends. No one here would participate in that. Yay! I love it. And then if we can talk about that, then we're going to talk about more fun things like resentment, revenge, and victimhood. All right, I promise it's going to be hopeful. Just work with me here a little bit. And if we can do that, then we're going to talk about learning to let go. And if we can learn to let go, then may we breathe with one another. And if we can breathe with one another, then we're going to talk about the evidence of a life fully lived. I don't know about you, but I got scars all over my body. First scar I ever had was on my lip because I was sledding at 3 years old and I ran into the back of a pickup truck, ripped that bad boy open. I got another scar inside of this lip in the very same spot because I got hit with a tennis racket by my sister. That was a fun one. This scar is from 9 years old when a baseball hit me at a practice because I wasn't paying attention. They thought maybe I would lose my eye. I didn't. That's nice. That's a good one. This scar is when I was in 7th grade and I was fighting a kid on ice and slipped because nothing's more exciting than 13-year-old boys working out their masculinity with one another on some ice. This scar is from running into a door in this eyelash. I have staples on the back of my head here from surfing at Newport. Do you surf, Cory? I do not. That's why I have scars on the back of my head. This scar that runs down the top of my head is staples when I was surfing outside of Honolulu. Again, Cory, do you surf? I do not. So why were you so far in the ocean? It's a horrible life choice. Bleeding like a quarter of a mile out, swimming all the way back, and all you hear in your head is, da-na, da-na. You knew. Oh, my God. And I'm like, I'm so screwed, right? The whole time, just blood gushing everywhere, paddling through it, and you're like, final moments. This is super nice. I got so many scars on my shins because I'm just tall enough that most coffee tables are in my way. And yeah, no, that's a real thing. It's really painful. Last year, I was doing batting practice with my son. He hits a line drive into a bucket. The ball ricochets off the bucket into my lip. So I got 3 stitches in the inside of my mouth last fall. It mainly just looked like I had herpes for 3 weeks, but that was it. Not a joke. That's a real story. And so we all have scars. And those aren't even the interesting ones. And I think the interesting ones are the ones that we don't ever want to talk about. They're the ones that are inside. They're the ones that we don't show, or maybe we show it all the time. Those are the ones that, man, I know what it's like being in an abusive family, and the ones that you work so hard to keep secret. The ones when I was abused as a child by a family member in ways that you don't ever want to talk about. Those are the scars that are deep inside that you can never imagine. I got like physical scars. When I was a teenage boy, I had horrible acne. And I don't know if you remember your teenage years when anything makes you insecure. And just feeling like my life was out of control at that point because my sister was a drug addict and her kids lived at our house, and it felt like I could control nothing. And then I remember getting this like horrible acne and being just so embarrassed to go outside and so mad at God because like I can control nothing in my life right now. And the scars that puckered my face for years until they healed. There's scars of my decisions. Those are ones maybe that hurt the worst. Thousands of paper cuts that I've given myself. Thousands of tiny little wounds, and many of them have healed over, but I know what they are and the shame that you carry and the work that you have to do as a human being to heal from those things. Those are the scars that we all carry. What I love about our faith tradition, what I love about the way of Jesus is that Jesus is so honest about scars. Follow along in John chapter 20. As Jesus talks about scars, Jesus says, now Thomas, also known as Didymus, this is, by the way, after the resurrection. Jesus has been resurrected. Mary and the other disciples have already seen Jesus. Many of them have asked Jesus to look at his scars, to put their literal fingers in his wounds. Thomas wasn't there for that. Thomas is like, I don't believe any of it, and that's where we're at in the story. And one of the 12 was not with the disciples when Jesus came, so the other disciples told him, we have seen the Lord, but he said to them, unless I see the nail marks in his hands and put my finger where the nails were and put my hand into his side, I will not believe. A week later, his disciples were in the house again, and Thomas was with them. Though the doors were locked, right? Jesus came and stood among them and said, peace be with you. Then he said to Thomas, put your finger here, see my hands, reach out your hand and put it into my side. Stop doubting and believe. What is the most interesting for me about the Jesus story is that they're not stories just 2,000 years ago, but that the way of Jesus, that following Jesus, shows us a path for healing and transformation and maturity in our own lives today. That following this way of Jesus gives us a better example of how to be human. That following this way of Jesus shows us how we deal with life. What is interesting is that after the resurrection, Jesus has scars. That feels different than the story that I got. I felt like the story that I heard about resurrection is that everything was magically different and the whole world has changed and you can participate in that magic at any time. And yet that's never the story. The interesting thing about resurrection is that after Jesus was resurrected from the dead, guess what was changed in the world? Absolutely nothing. Pontius Pilate was still Pontius Pilate. Caesar was still Caesar. The people that betrayed him had still betrayed him, and the scars didn't go away. The scars were there. In fact, the scars were a hallmark that everyone wanted to see. So if Jesus still has scars, what in my life thinks that I should not have them? But the interesting thing about Jesus is that he does different things than most of us. Jesus has the scars and then operates in a different way. Now, for many of us, let me just say in my own life, I grew up in conservative land. And in conservative land, we did denial and avoidance beautifully. We didn't want to touch any of those things. We wanted to deny that pain would happen because Jesus and the blood of the Lamb had covered your life and all of your problems were now going to work out for you. That was the messaging. And then many of us didn't experience that 100% radical transformation, and we ended up being mad at God. But it wasn't God, because in God's message is this: I resurrected from the dead, and I still have scars. It's a way of saying you're going to go through death. You're going to go through pain. You're going to have suffering in your life. And when you go through that, guess what you still have? You have your own wounds and your own scars. Don't deny that. Don't avoid that. Because here's the creepy systemic issue that comes with that. When you deny and avoid your own pain, then you practice denying and avoiding the pain of everybody else. And I know we don't see any issues like that in society. I'm just saying. Just in case you thought I was just going to stop with conservatives, let's talk about our progressive selves. And we have both in us, by the way. This is not political. The reality of it is that we all have a conservative component of our soul and a progressive component of our soul, and they're constantly dancing. The conservative component of your soul is simply trying to conserve things. There's a way of life that it likes and it wants to conserve it because it works. So if your life works for you and other people are telling you that your life is making their life harder, you're like, I don't want to hear that. My life is awesome, right? That doesn't make you bad. That's just a part of your soul. But there's another part of your soul that's progressive that constantly wants to move outside of that circle that you are in, and it wants to grow a little bit. It wants to evolve a little bit, and they're at odds with one another. This is just humanity. Most of us tend to lean in one side of our soul or another. The progressive side of our soul, though, loves things like resentment. It loves things like vengeance, and it loves things like being a victim. But what's so victimhood, I should say. And that's just a part of the soul over there, where Jesus doesn't do any of that. Jesus doesn't lean into denial or avoidance. He's not trying to say, hey, I don't have scars. I don't want to show this. He doesn't do any of that. But you know what else Jesus doesn't do? Jesus doesn't come back from the dead and he's just like, let's go F up some Romans right now. Am I right? And apparently Jesus sounds like Robert Kennedy all of a sudden. Okay, that's interesting. Weird. But we all thought it. All right. And so Jesus doesn't get into resentment either. Jesus could have said, everyone line up. Come sit here. Remember when I was in the Garden of Gethsemane? Remember when they came for me? Where were you? What did you do? Who was there at my side? None of you. Who was there putting your bodies in the way of the Romans? Did you do it for me? Come on, John. You're my beloved disciple, right? No, he didn't do that. Jesus was a real victim. That's the story. The ultimate victim of the universe, a blameless victim. And he never once uses victimhood. Isn't that interesting? And the most interesting people in our liberal la lives are real victims who do not participate in victimhood. They're very aware of their scars, and they use their scars, right? And they show their scars to the world to say, this really happened. May it never happen to any others. What a difference of a way of operating in the universe is that Jesus doesn't live into the shadow side of either version of our soul. Jesus is not trying to avoid. Jesus is not trying to deny. And in Jesus asking us to follow him, Jesus is saying, take a deep look within yourself. Participate in self-awareness. Participate in observation. Don't live in denial or avoidance of your wounds. Be very honest about the scars that you have, because your scars are unique to you. Don't pretend like the story that you're going to have of faith is that you will not get these. It is a matter of when you will get these. And by the way, this is also a story of like, God doesn't give God's toughest challenges to God's toughest soldiers. They say that all the time. That's weird that people say that. This isn't some story of a God who's like weirdly trying to punish you to see if like you can handle it. No, there's not good reasoning for why horrible things happen in the world. But I can promise all of you this, all of your darkest moments, all of your Fridays most of the time, you wouldn't wish on anybody else, ever. But they are the moments that have most shaped you. And I don't know why that's how it works to be human. I don't know why. I don't know why the greatest music comes from there, and the greatest art comes from there, and the biggest moments of transformation come from there, but they do. They come from our Fridays, and that allows you to speak into your Sundays in a way that you could have never imagined. So don't avoid or deny what you've gone through. And then on the other side, don't allow those scars, or I should say it better this way, allow those scars to become scars. Don't allow them to continue just to be open wounds that fester in your life. Don't allow them to be open wounds that every time you touch them that they're still painful and they lead to more resentment and more pain in the world. Don't allow them to lead to vengefulness that never heals anybody. There's a reason that Jesus shows us resurrection in a certain way. Jesus doesn't go out there and create more pain in the world. Jesus knows the ultimate truth that your pain is either going to be transformed or it's going to be transmitted. You choose. And we're a community that wants our pain to be transformed, not transmitted more into the world. There's no end to that cycle. Do you want to know the end to that cycle always? You end up killing somebody without fail. You go to more war. There are no winners in that type of thinking. And Jesus is very aware. The beauty of the Gospels, the beauty of our faith tradition is that God is always on the side of victims. God is always on the side of the oppressed. God is always there and hears our cries and our pleas for mercy. And yet God is always reminding us to live beyond victimhood, but to live as people of faith and grace in a way that our wounds will be healed and that we will transform the world and not bring more hurt into it. Now, those are all easy things to say. They're incredibly challenging words to live out. How do we learn to let go? How do we learn to let go of the past so that our wounds don't hold us back anymore? Because at the end of the day, that's what we want as human beings, right? We want to move forward. Who here wants your wounds to keep you tethered to the life that you do not want? Nobody. What you want is that you want to be able to move past those things, and you want to be able to live in such a way that you find freedom now. What you want to be able to do is to walk into a room. Again, I say this all the time. Why I need 12-step rooms? Because when you walk into that room, you say, "Hi, I'm Cory, and I'm fill in the blank." It's a reminder of walking into a room and saying, I'm not alone. And every time I walk into one of those rooms, there's that 80-something-year-old guy. And I can think of him every single time I walk into the meeting that I walk into. And he said, I've been sober for 20 years, but I didn't come into this room until I was 63. I'm so glad that you are here today. And he shows me his scars every single time. Thank God for him. Like, truly thank God for him. That he remembers everyone's name when they're new to that room. That he is somebody who practices transformation with his scars. And he's got the worst of stories to share. That Jesus is constantly inviting us to a place of, and despite all of that, that doesn't need to be your final story. Thank God we participate in a story that is one of resurrection. That even in the most God-forsaken places, even in the places where there's the most pain, the most scars, the most wounds, that God can transform that God can bring life even there. We've done this practice in here before, but I want to do it again with all of you. So would you take a moment? Maybe just ground yourself. You can put your hands on your lap or over your belly. Close your eyes. And begin to breathe in deep. And breathe out. And maybe what you picture right now is one of those scars. Those things that feel like something that has defined your life. And maybe there's even an open wound there still. And as you breathe in deep, and as you breathe out, would you say to yourself and to that wound, I see your pain. And I also see your courage. Would you remind yourself that you don't wish that Friday, that crucifixion on anybody. But man, you've seen the courage of the life that you've been living and that you've gotten yourself this far, that God's been with you every step of the way. Maybe as you're still breathing and thinking, would you have compassion on somebody else? Think of somebody who's just neutral in your life. They don't hold weight one way or the other, but you picture their face and maybe you know their wound. And you say to them deep inside, I see your pain, and I also see your courage. And as you're breathing in and breathing out, would you think of that person who's wounded you more than anybody else? And would you say to them, I see your pain, and I also see your courage. And as you're holding space for all of that, would you just imagine and hold as many people as you can in your heart and your mind right now? There's 8 billion of us on planet Earth at the moment. Would you say, I see your pain, and I also see your courage? Whether it's yourself, that neutral person in your life, the person who has hurt you the most, every human being, would you know that they have scars? Would you know that they have wounds just like you? Would you want to participate in a world in which you are so transformed that you no longer need to transmit hurt and that you participate in their healing as well? Now, Abby, the reality of scars is it's just evidence of a life fully lived. I'm not saying that I wish that on you. I'm not saying that God wishes that on you. I'm saying the reality of what it means to be a human being. That you are here, that you are living a life fully lived, that Jesus said, I have come that you may have life and life to the fullest. And the reality of that life is it will come with wounds and it will come with scars, but those scars, may they be wounds that heal the world. May they be wounds that tell your story. May they be wounds that when you hold them out, another person says, me too. Thank you that I am not alone. May your scars remind the world that there can be transformation, that there can be healing, that grace and unconditional love that meets you exactly where you are will always find you. Would you find those same 3 or 4 people around you? And would you answer this question? How can your scars be a reminder to you and others of what's good?